What a long sojourn through the wilderness. Way back to the last Sunday of November. 7 long months of sorting our way through this sand and grit and lack of what feels like abundant life. The children have learned a lesson about the presence of God in this time, or at least they are pretending for my sake. My question is for you to think all the way back to that last November and the journey we have made through the wilderness together, and invite you to share what lesson or lessons have you learned on this desert wilderness journey. Anyone want to share? Christopher? Endurance. I have learned endurance on this wilderness journey. That there is beauty in the wilderness as well. And back here? Whoa, trust God, be patient, don't give up, keep going. Other lessons? Yes. Persistence. May I say, nevertheless, she persisted. We learn persistence in the wilderness. Yes, Fred. Every step of the journey is important, right? There is no more important step than the one before or the one after. Yeah. Wonderful lessons. Any more before I move on? Yes. I'm not alone. Wow. What a big one. I am not alone in the wilderness. Our children received a copy of a way of sharing the Bible story called Manna and Mercy. We haven't spent much time with that book, and I hope we will in the future with our children and with all of God's beloved children, because I think that way of telling the biblical story has many nuggets of wisdom for our congregation and for us as individuals. The way that book, Manna and Mercy, tells the story of the Bible is on a wilderness journey. That book, Manna and Mercy, talks about the time of the Hebrews coming out of Egypt and journeying through the wilderness to the land of promise and plenty. That book, Manna and Mercy, calls it wilderness school. Right? Wilderness school, that God has led the people out of one place, eventually to another place, but in between, for 40 years, which means for as long as it took to learn the lesson, God brought the people on a journey through the wilderness to learn some lessons. Wilderness school. What are the lessons that the people of God learned on that journey? The same lessons you shared. We are not alone here in this place. God is still with us in this place. There is beauty in this place. Persist in this place. They also, shall we say it, were just as human as we are in the wilderness. They moaned and groaned. They wanted to go back to the place that was actually oppressive, but they at least knew it and understood it and knew their place in it. They were afraid. They were hungry. And they were fed enough, but it wasn't the fine, luxurious cakes, the great big banquets that they had been used to. And they found water, and it was enough, but it wasn't the lush, green waterfall of Togo that they had been used to. There was some ego going on in the wilderness, and it wasn't just for the people, it was for Moses as well, the leaders. What we have in our scriptures is the remnant of a leadership battle between Moses and Aaron and Miriam. Guess who lost? Miriam. And Moses and Aaron figured it out, how to work together. And then we have Moses complaining too, the great leader, who says, God, you gave me these people to lead across the wilderness, and now they're mumbling and grumbling, and I don't know what to do with them. And then God gives Moses help. The lessons of the wilderness are many. Yes, it is a place we don't necessarily like, we don't want to be. The people and the leaders moan and groan and grumble and complain. And along the journey, there are lessons learned. Lessons of faith, lessons of life. Every step on this journey matters. We cannot get to the place we're going if we don't take the step right in front of us. Going backwards is not an option. Persisting is. And we are fed by the providence of God, and we are nourished by the Spirit of God. So we too have been on a journey through wilderness school here at First United for these 7 months. We've been on a journey through wilderness school, many of us in our own lives, through loss of a beloved one that sends us into a deep pit of despair, through loss of a job, through addiction, through recovery, through, for me, the wilderness of figuring out what life with another person means, which is wonderful, but also different, right? And I'm not one of those pastors or one of those Christians who says, well, God put you in a desert intentionally for a reason. I don't want to take that belief system away from you if that is an important one for you, but that's not mine. I think sometimes we just land in the wilderness, and it just is. For us as a congregation, for you and me in our own lives, sometimes we just land there. Sometimes we land there because of our choices, our bad choices. Sometimes we land there because of someone else's bad choices. And sometimes we're just there because that is the course of events. For whatever reason, you and I, as a congregation, have been on a journey through the wilderness. And in many of your lives and in my life, there have been wilderness moments of all the abundant life that we thought was a given, stripped away from us. And the lessons I want us to take from this wilderness moment are the ones that you mentioned. There is actual beauty here that we might miss if all we have is the lush, green, verdant, abundant life. There is a trust in God that happens here that we often forget when we have well more than what we really need. There is a sense of community that happens here when we finally realize we never could make it on our own, and we're crazy to think that we could. And there is a sense of grace, of God's presence, holding us and carrying us all the way through. For our elders and deacons who are installed and ordained today, there is a particular lesson for you and for me as your pastor. Today is the anniversary of my ordination as well. I was ordained on Pentecost in 2009, intentionally so, because this is the day in the church, for Presbyterians in particular, where we claim the power of the Spirit. We are not good at that in the Presbyterian world. We want everything decently and in order. We do not like the wilderness, and we do everything we can to stay out of it, thinking that somehow, because of our fabulous brains and amazing intellect and hard work ethic, we can avoid it. But here's the truth for those elders and deacons and pastors. We will not necessarily explicitly name our journey as a wilderness journey from here on out, but we are still in the wilderness as a congregation and as the people of God. In fact, I shared back in Advent that all of life, in a way, is a journey through the wilderness. And so for those leaders, those deacons and those elders and this pastor who are charged with leading a congregation through the wilderness, what are our lessons for this moment in time, for this particular congregation? Well, you've named them again already. It is not our charge to be led by ego, to be led with the sense that we've got it together and we have to whip a congregation into shape. That's the work of God, not ours. It is our job to be guided by the Spirit, to pay attention to that river of living water flowing in our souls and in the soul of this vibrant community, and to point it out when the people forget. There is beauty here. Did you see it? We are fed here. Did you taste it? We are nourished here. Did you swim in it? And that, yes, we are charged with leading the people through this wilderness to a land of promise and plenty, indeed. But I'm going to suggest that that's not really the point of our calling. The point of our calling is to remind the people of the lessons of the wilderness, and that one day we'll get to that land, but that God is right here, right now, and we can thrive right here, right now. Amen.